years old,
When I was 27 years old,
I left a very demanding job in management consulting
I left a very demanding job in management consulting
for a job that was even more demanding,
for a job that was even more demanding,
teaching.
teaching.
I went to teach seventh graders math.
I want to teach 7th graders math
In the New York City public schools.
in the New York City public schools.
And like any teacher, I made quizzes and tests.
And like any teacher, I made quizzes and tests.
Gave out homework assignments.
I gave out homework assignments.
When the work came back, I calculated grades.
When the work came back, I calculated grades.
What struck me was that IQ was
What struck me was that IQ was
not the only difference between
not the only difference between
my best and my worst students.
my best and my worst students.
So I left the classroom
So I left the classroom
and I went to graduate school to become
and I went to graduate school to become
a psychologist.
a psychologist.
I started studying kids and adults in all
I started studying kids and adults in all kinds
of super challenging settings.
of super challenging settings.
And in every study, my question was,
And in every study, my question was,
who is successful here and why?
who is successful here and why?
One characteristic emerged
One characteristic emerged
as a significant predictor of success.
as a significant predictor of success,
And it wasn't social intelligence.
and it was social intelligence.
It wasn't good looks,
It wasn't good looks,
physical health,
physical health,
and it wasn't IQ.
and it wasn't IQ.
It was grit.
It was grit.
Grit is passion and perseverance for
Grit is passion and perseverance for
very long-term goals.
very long-term goals.
Grit is having stamina.
Grit is having stamina.
Grit is sticking with your future. Day
Grit is sticking with your future day
in, day out, not just for the week, not just
day in, day out, not just for the week,
for the month,
not just for the month,
but for years.
but for years.
And working really hard
And working really hard
to make that future a reality.
to make that future a reality.
Grit is living life like it's a marathon,
Grit is living life like it's a marathon,
not a sprint.
not a sprint.
So far, the best idea
So far, the best idea
that I've heard about building grit in
I've heard about building grit
kids is something called growth
in kids is something called
mindset.
growth mindset.
This is an idea developed at Stanford University by Carol Dweck.
This is an idea developed at Stanford University by Carol D.
And it is the belief
And it is the belief
that the ability to learn
that the ability to learn
is not fixed,
is not fixed,
that it can change with your
that it can change with
effort.
your effort.
Dr. Dweck has shown that when
Dr. Dewey has shown that
kids read and learn about the
kids read and learn about the
brain and how it changes and
brain and how it changes,
grows in response to challenge,
and grows in response to challenge.
They're much more likely to persevere when they fail.
They're much more likely to persevere when they fail
Because they don't believe that failure is a permanent condition.
because they don't believe that failure is permanent.
So, growth mindset is a great idea for
Conditions your growth mindset
building grit.
is a great idea for building grit,
But we need more.
but we need more.
And that's where I'm going to end my remarks
And that's where I'm going to end my remark
because that's where we are.
because that's where we are.
That's the work that stands before us.
That stand before you wish, before us
We need to take our best
we need to take our best
ideas, our strongest
ideas, our strongest
intuitions, and
intuitions,
we need to test them.
and we need to test them.
We need to measure whether we've been successful,
We need to measure whether we've been successful,
and we have to be willing to fail, to be wrong,
and we have to be willing to fail, to be wrong,
to start over again with
to start over again
lessons learned.
with lesson learned.
In other words,
In other words,
we need to be gritty
we need to be greedy
about getting our kids
about grading our kids
grittier.
greedier.
Thank you.
Thank you.